How do we plant cover crops? Well, we've just done ours here in our Central Portugal Permaculture project, and these cover crops I've planted in this area here are annual cover crops for a future vegetable garden. So I'm going to show you how we planted it, how we amended the soil, which cover crops we chose, and what our plan is for this area. I'm going to make another video on how we've done this same thing in our pasture and food forests. However, that has been done differently as it is a larger scale and with perennial cover crops rather than annual cover crops such as these. And the perennial cover crops are really good for fixing carbon. You can actually get carbon credits here in Portugal for doing so. What are cover crops? Cover crops are used to improve the quality of the soil by increasing the organic matter in the soil and increasing the nitrogen available in the soil. Usually cover crops are planted before you plant a new garden or in your crop rotation. This whole area here behind me to my left and right was completely full of brambles, and it's a really good spot for growing vegetables in the summer because it's quite damp, but it was so full of brambles we haven't actually done that. We did one crop of corn here and that's it. So before we actually did anything, we had to analyze our soil test results. So we noticed we were very low in nitrogen, and also it was quite acidic and low in a few nutrients, but that's caused by the acidity. So what we knew we needed to do was apply lime. We calculated the amount of lime that we needed to apply, and we bought organic lime, registered organic lime with magnesium, which will increase the calcium and increase the pH, so it was nearer to neutral. And then also for the nitrogen, we needed to think about how we're going to increase the nitrogen in the soil, and we chose to do that through compost, manure, worm castings, and cover crops. So what we had to do is trim all the brambles, trim all the grass down, and then we went through and dug all the bramble roots out by hand, and then we raked all the grass to one side to dry it as hay so we can use it as mulch. So that we could plant the seeds well and not have competition from weeds, we rotivated the whole area multiple times. And when we were doing that, we applied the lime. We spread the lime evenly in this space, and we rotivated that in. Then we brought in compost from our chicken compost system and aged manure, composted manure from our sheep system, and also worm castings from our worm farm. We spread that out and we rotivated that all in a bit further. As this is an annual garden, we don't want weeds to become a problem, and we don't want to be planting cover crops that will become a problem. So in an annual vegetable garden, we want to plant annual cover crops, not perennial cover crops. I've got a blog with a list of all the cover crops we've been growing over the years here on this farm in Portugal. I'll send a link to that below. But what we did this time here, because of the time of year we're planting in autumn, we planted clovers, red clovers, and we planted field beans, lupins, a variety of mustards. I also planted leftover seeds I have of peas, fava beans, brassicas, and turnips. So there's a huge variety in here, as well as some taller grasses like oats and rye. So we've got a nice big selection of annual cover crops, mostly legumes, nitrogen fixing, and that's what we chose to plant here. So I bought them all organic seeds, or they're seeds that we'd saved ourselves, mixed them all together. I mixed all the seeds together in a bucket, and then I mixed the seeds with compost so that it'll be easier to distribute. I got the guys on our permaculture design course to help us with spreading the seeds. So we spread the seeds evenly in the field. It's so easy to try and spread a bucket of seeds in a field and run out of seeds before you finish the field. So the best thing is to split the seeds into many buckets and try and distribute evenly with one bucket, and then go again on another, and then go again on another, and that way you get a nice even distribution. The best thing is to throw the seeds across your body and over your shoulder to get this nice line as you're walking. Once the seeds were distributed, we rotivated it over again. We just went quickly with the rotavator to cover the seeds with soil. And then what we wanted to do is cover the soil with a mulch. So previously we'd cut the grass with a strimmer and saved the grass to the side. So we used this saved grass that was grown here as a mulch and covered the whole area with hay. And that helps protect the soil from the sun and keeps it holding the moisture better. So then all we had to do was wait for the rain, and we've had a nice few rainy weeks with sunny spells between. So you can see behind me, all the cover crops have established very well. We're now coming into winter. It's going to be cold, and the grass here, the cover crops here, are not going to grow so well through the winter, but they'll be ready for the warm spring, and these will grow rapidly starting in about February. What I'll do is I'll cut all of these plants with a strimmer once they get about 20 centimeters tall. I'll repeatedly do that before the plants go to flower, because we don't want to use nitrogen to make flowers and fruit. We're going to save the nitrogen that these nitrogen fixers are creating in their leaves, cut the leaves and have them decompose and increase the amount of nitrogen we have in the soil here. So that process is called chop and drop. We go through, cut the cover crops and just leave them to decompose in place. Then before it's time to plant our summer vegetables, we'll need to think about what we're going to do next. So in some areas, I will rotivate the cover crops into the soil to fix the nitrogen into the soil, mix some more compost, and then direct seed into the soil. So that would be things like potatoes, summer beans, and sweet potatoes. For the rest of the area here, we will be making beds on contour, and we won't actually rotivate there again. They'll become no-dig beds. So what we'll do is we'll put a layer of compost along the beds, and the beds will be along contour lines, and then we'll cover that compost with cardboard, and then we'll cover the cardboard with wood chips or straw. I find straw is much better than hay if you don't want weeds, but the hay is better for building soil. So before I actually plant anything, I would like to prepare all the beds and then install my irrigation. So we'll have one large irrigation pipe going through the garden and small pipes going to each bed. And that will be connected to our automated irrigation system. So once we plant, I never have to worry about watering them. Then along the beds, I will make little holes through the cardboard and plant plugs, small seedlings of vegetables that I've grown up in the greenhouse. So in this area, I'm going to next year have pumpkins, courgettes, melons, and tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, your normal summer vegetables. If I don't have time to plant the whole garden, I will leave an area untouched so that the cover crops can actually go to seed and drop seeds and grow again next year, and we'll just finish the garden next year with even more nitrogen and more organic matter in the soil. So that's the plan here for this summer garden for the cover crops. For more information on how to do this, I have an article in a magazine, Central Connect magazine, which I'll send you a link to on step-by-step instructions. And I have a blog on all the cover crops we've been experimenting with in Portugal, and which shows you when to plant them. We also have done cover crops in the alleyways in our agroforest and the reforestation field, as well as a new blank field we've put in perennial cover crops for pasture. So those have been prepared and planted in a very different way, and I would also like to show you how I've done that. That will be in another video. Please, if you have enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe.